Listen Up Audiobooks presents Nixon's Gamble. Written by Ray Locker. Narrated by Kevin Stillwell. Prologue. Bitter and combative, Richard Nixon sat facing members of a Washington grand jury who had flown to California to hear him, on June 25, 1975, testify on behalf of his former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, L. Patrick Gray. Nixon had resisted testifying since he resigned the previous August, claiming his health, including blood clots in his legs that required surgery the previous fall, kept him from traveling. So the grand jury came to the makeshift courtroom at the Coast Guard station in San Clemente, California, where Nixon was living out his exile. Prosecutors wanted to know if Gray had lied under oath when he testified that he did not know of several wiretaps the FBI had placed on the telephones of a Navy enlisted man, Yeoman Charles Radford, who was suspected of leaking White House secrets to the press. Nixon knew Gray had not lied because he had never told Gray about the wiretaps, or much of anything else for that matter. His entire White House, Nixon testified, was based on secrecy and the need to know. His secretaries of defense and state often learned what Nixon was doing through the newspaper, or by accident. Few knew that he had a secret team of investigators, nicknamed the Plumbers, who spied on those suspected of leaking secrets. Gray had no need to know of the wiretaps, so Nixon felt no need to tell him. "You and the prosecutors," Nixon said, "can kick the hell out of us for wiretapping and for the plumbers and the rest, but because of secrecy, we have changed the world." Secrecy shortened the Vietnam War, and the secret Cambodian bombings saved at least 10,000 lives. Secrecy enabled him to reach an arms control deal with the Soviet Union. If he had to negotiate in public, Nixon said, with no security whatever, then the United States is finished as a great power. Maybe a lot of people don't care, but I care a great deal. I think all of you care a great deal. That is what Yeoman Radford is about. And I would strongly urge the special prosecutor don't open that can of worms, because there is even more. There were many more. All presidents keep secrets. It has been impossible to run a government without them. Franklin Roosevelt developed the atomic bomb without ever telling his vice president Harry Truman, who only learned of it after Roosevelt died and Truman became president. Nixon, however, sat scorned and humiliated in the witness chair because he had raised secrecy to an art form, gambled with history, and lost. Nixon's secrecy helped him reach audacious goals that reshaped U.S. foreign policy and created an enduring personal legacy. Reaching those goals, however, cost him the presidency. Nixon wanted to restore the relations with China that the United States cut off in 1949, when Mao Zedong's communists overwhelmed the feeble, pro-U.S. government of Chiang Kai-shek. 20 years of isolation had left 800 million people on the fringe of world affairs, a mystery to all but a few Westerners allowed to travel there. Antipathy toward China, much of it drummed up by Nixon and his fellow members of the pro-Shang China lobby, rose even more after China intervened in the Korean War. U.S. policymakers since then had been paralyzed by the fear of another Chinese horde, particularly in Vietnam. If he won the China gamble, Nixon knew, his other plans would fall into place. He wanted to thaw the Cold War with the Soviet Union and slow down the costly arms race which had the world on edge. Both sides' deep nuclear arsenals could destroy the world many times over. Fear of mutual destruction was no substitute for real détente, Nixon believed, and he sought a world where the rivals could talk without bluster or histrionics. In Southeast Asia, Nixon wanted to end the war in Vietnam that
Sample complete. Ready to continue?